Senator Georgiou.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is directed to the Attorney-General, Senator George Brandis, representing the Prime Minister. For the last 5 months, One Nation has held a Senate inquiry into the conduct of banks and receivers towards rural customers and the devastating impact their erroneous behaviour has had to their families around Australia. This inquiry received 85 submissions and unearthed some disturbing and horrifying stories. Dishonesty by banks' appointed receivers, managers and liquidators, unethical conduct by banks outside their own banking code of conduct, farmers who have been left financially ruined, and some who unfortunately have committed suicide as a result of such unlawful foreclosures. When will the government be able to finally announce the date of implementation of the revised voluntary banking code of conduct?
The Leader of the Government, Senator Brandis.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Senator Georgiou. It's a very important question, and I agree with you that the issue of the conduct of banks, and in particular their treatment of a large number of customers, in particular categories of customers in the belonging to the vulnerable groups you've mentioned, has been a proper subject of national discussion now for some time. And the question, Senator Georgiou, is what the government can most effectively do to address the concerns. Now, Senator Cameron over there says there should be a Royal Commission. The problem with a Royal Commission is that it will take forever and achieve nothing. That's the problem. It will take forever, achieve nothing, except for the bevy of lawyers, who will be able to afford new beach houses on the strength of all the fees that they will charge. Now, so, Senator Georgiou, what we are doing is taking action that will be much more effective and immediately. Let me run you through what we are doing. We've set up a new one-stop shop dispute resolution body to ensure consumers and small business can access fair compensation straight away. Not years down into the future, after a Royal Commission that might go for 5 years, but straight away. We've introduced new legislation for banking executive accountability to make bank executives more accountable to their customers. We've introduced a major bank levy to ensure a fair contribution to budget repair from institutions that have benefited from our stable financial system. We've strengthened the resources and powers of ASIC, the regulatory body, through an additional $127 million invested in that body, and introduced an industry funding model for ASIC.
Order. Senator Brandis, time has expired. Senator Georgiou, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. It's not just the banks, Senator Brandis. In one submission, the inquiry was told that the cost of transporting 3,500 sheep from a property in Western Australia should have cost around $15,000. Instead, the receivers, Cord and Mentha, charged the farmer more than $90,000. When and what action is the federal government intending to take to make receivers and managers accountable for their actions, not to the banks that appoint them, but to the parties they are administrating?
Senator Brandis.
Well, once again, Senator Georgiou, a very, very relevant question. And Senator Georgiou, this is an area of law in which I used to practice, I might say, corporate insolvency, and I am very well familiar with the way in which corporate insolvency practitioners sometimes charge from the estate, from the administration, extremely large fees. Now, corporate insolvency practitioners are subject to very, very rigorous regulation under the Corporations Act. They are also subject to very rigorous regulations and oversight by their professional body. But nevertheless, Senator Georgiou, you are right. You are right to say that the level of fees and charges charged by corporate insolvency practitioners such as receivers and liquidators and administrators is something that should be kept under review, and it is something that the Treasurer, Mr Morrison, and the Assistant Treasurer, Ms Dwyer, do keep under review.
Final supplementary question, Senator Georgiou.
Thank you, Mr President. There have been at least 17 inquiries into Australia's finance sector post the GFC, including the government's own Ramsay report, which found over 80,000 customers were affected. That's 80,000 customers, with losses totalling more than $5 billion. When will the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister wake up, show some leadership, act to stop this unlawful and unreasonable behaviour, and hold a royal commission on the banks?
Senator Brandis.
Well, Senator Georgiou, if there have been 17 inquiries, including parliamentary inquiries, since the GFC, then perhaps that's a good argument why we don't need another one. Perhaps that's an argument that what we ought to be doing, as this government is doing, is to get on with implementing the recommendations of those 17 inquiries, which is precisely what we are doing. And some of the measures that the government has introduced that I just ran you through in answer to your first question, Senator Georgiou, are evidence of the government giving effect to the recommendations of the 17 inquiries we've already held. Now, in relation to the Ramsay review, the government is responding to the second report of Professor Ramsay's review, addressing the issue of legacy cases of bank misconduct. And Senator Georgiou, the reason we have the Ramsay review, the reason the government is responding to it to get a real outcome for those customers, is because we've adopted the recommendations of one of those
Senator
17
Brandis.
inquiries.
Order.